Another man's child looked up at my wife, wrapped his arms around her legs, and called her mommy. I laughed at first. Then I saw the other man's face go pale. And that's when I noticed the birthmark. Folks, Uncle Mickle here. I've told a lot of stories in my life, but this one still tightens my chest when I say it out loud. It starts ordinary, almost sweet, and then it takes a hard left into something that cracked my marriage wide open. Before I get into this, do me a favor and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from, and what time it is right now. And if stories like mine hit you where it hurts, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Helps Uncle Mickle keep bringing you the truth nobody else wants to talk about. All right, let me take you back. It was a Saturday morning in early spring, the kind where the air still had a chill, but the sun promised better things. We were standing in the gymnasium of Lincoln Elementary, the same gym where I'd gone to school myself decades earlier. Polished wood floors, blue and gold banners hanging crooked from the rafters, the smell of coffee, construction paper, and those cheap powdered donuts parents always bring to school events. It was my son Caleb's family fun day. Games, face painting, little booths run by the teachers. Harmless stuff. The kind of thing you don't think twice about, because life still feels stable at that point. My wife, Sarah, was standing beside me. She had on a light gray sweater, hair pulled back the way she did when she didn't want to fuss with it. She was smiling, laughing with one of the other moms. I remember thinking how comfortable she looked there. Like she belonged. Like this was our life, solid and earned. Caleb was off running around with his friends, sneakers squeaking, yelling too loud. I was holding a paper cup of bad coffee, making small talk with a dad from his class. We were all pretending to enjoy ourselves, the way adults do. Then it happened. A little boy, maybe 4 or 5, broke away from a group near the face-painting table. He ran straight toward Sarah. No hesitation. No confusion. He wrapped his arms around her legs like he'd done it 1,000 times before. And he said it, clear as day. Mommy. A couple people chuckled. I did too. I even shook my head, smiling, like kids say the darndest things. Sarah froze. Not stiff exactly. Just paused, like someone had hit a mute button on her body. She looked down at the boy, and for half a second, something crossed her face. Not surprise. Not confusion. Recognition. I felt it before I understood it. That little drop in your stomach when something doesn't line up, even though you don't know why yet. A man hurried over. Mid-30s maybe. Clean cut. Well-dressed in that casual professional way. He grabbed the boy gently by the shoulders. Hey, buddy, that's not Mommy, he said, laughing too hard. You can't just do that. The boy looked up at him, then back at Sarah, confused. Hurt even. But she is, he said. The gym didn't get quiet. That's the strange part. Life kept moving around us. Kids screaming. A whistle blowing. Someone dropping a tray of cookies. But my world narrowed down to 3 people. The boy, my wife, and the man, whose eyes finally met mine. That's when I noticed it. Just above the boy's left eyebrow, half hidden by his hairline, was a small crescent-shaped birthmark. The same one my son had. Same shape. Same spot. I didn't say anything. Not then. I just stood there, coffee going cold in my hand, watching my wife gently pry the boy's arms loose. She didn't look at me. And in that moment, without a single word spoken, I knew my life was about to split clean down the middle. And I wasn't ready for what I was about to find. Before that morning in the gym, my life felt steady. Not perfect, I don't believe in perfect, but solid in the way a good pair of boots feels after years of wear. You trust them. You don't inspect the soles every time you lace them up. Sarah and I had been married 11 years. We met in our late 20s, both a little bruised from past relationships, both saying we weren't in a hurry. Funny how life ignores what you say out loud. We clicked fast, not in a fireworks way, but in a quiet, dependable way. Same sense of humor. Same values about family. Same idea of what enough looked like. We built a routine together. Morning coffee at the kitchen counter. Me reading the news on my phone. Her reminding me for the 100th time that staring at bad headlines before sunrise wasn't healthy. Evenings were simple. Dinner, homework with Caleb, a show we half-watched before bed. Nothing glamorous, but it was ours. Caleb came along 3 years into the marriage. Planned. Wanted. The kind of child that roots you deeper into your own life. I was there for every milestone. First steps. First word. First day of school. I coached his little league team, even though I was terrible at it. Sarah handled the schedules, the birthday parties, the stuff I'd forget if I didn't write it down. From the outside, we looked like every other middle-class family in a quiet town. A modest house. 2 cars in the driveway. Lawn that needed mowing more often than I did it. People waved when they drove by. Teachers knew our names. And for a long time, I believed in that picture. I didn't question it. Sarah worked part-time at a physical therapy clinic. Flexible hours. She liked helping people. I worked full-time, steady paycheck, same company for years. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. Bills got paid. Vacations were modest. Stress stayed manageable. Looking back now, I can see how much I trusted the silence between us. The unspoken assumption that what we didn't talk about didn't exist. There were small changes, though. Nothing dramatic. Just shifts. Sarah started volunteering more at school events, committees, fundraisers, extra meetings I didn't attend because someone had to work late or watch Caleb. She said it made her feel useful, connected. I supported that, encouraged it even. She also became more protective of her phone. Not secretive in an obvious way, just subtle. Screen turned down, notifications silenced. If I walked into the room, she'd angle it away without thinking. When I asked who she was texting, she always had an answer, usually about school stuff. Other parents, teachers. I didn't push. I didn't want to be that guy. The suspicious husband counting minutes and checking call logs. I trusted her. Or maybe I trusted the version of her I needed to believe in. Our intimacy slowed, too. Again, nothing alarming on its own. Life gets busy. Kids exhaust you. We still shared a bed. Still touched. Still laughed. But there were nights she rolled over early, said she was tired, and that was that. I told myself it was normal. Seasonal. Temporary. At school events, Sarah seemed different. More animated. More alive. Like she was stepping into a role that energized her. People liked her. Kids gravitated toward her. She had that warmth. That easy smile. I was proud of that. That's why, standing in that gym later, the image of that boy clinging to her legs felt so wrong. It didn't fit the picture I carried in my head. But in the days before that moment, if you'd asked me how my marriage was, I would have said, good, solid, normal. And that's the dangerous part. Because sometimes the ground doesn't shake before it gives way. Sometimes it just quietly shifts beneath your feet. After the gym incident, life didn't explode the way you'd expect in a movie. There was no shouting, no confrontation in the parking lot, no dramatic reveal with people staring. Instead, everything stayed painfully normal. Sarah laughed with another mom. The man apologized again, gave me a quick nod, and led the boy away. Caleb came running up, asking for another turn at the ring toss. I bent down, handed him the tickets, and told him to go on ahead. My voice sounded steady. I remember that. Too steady. Inside, something had shifted. Not panic. Not rage. Just awareness. Like a light turning on in a room I didn't know existed. On the drive home, Sarah talked about the event. About how crowded it was. About how tired she felt. About how she hoped the school would do something different next year. I nodded at the right times. Kept my eyes on the road. She never mentioned the boy. Neither did I. That silence sat between us like a third passenger. Heavy. Watchful. That night, after Caleb was asleep, I asked her casually if she knew the family of the little boy from the gym. I phrased it like a throwaway comment. Like curiosity. She didn't answer right away. Just long enough to be noticeable. "Oh, you mean the one who grabbed me?" she said, forcing a laugh. "No, not really. Kids get confused." I watched her hands while she spoke. She was folding laundry. T-shirts. Socks. Folding the same shirt twice. Something in me tightened. Over the next few days, I paid closer attention. Not in a paranoid way. In a quiet, observant way. The way you watch a storm forming on the horizon without knowing if it'll reach you. Sarah started leaving the house earlier on certain mornings. Said she had meetings at school or errands to run before work. Her schedule shifted just enough that it didn't line up with mine anymore. One afternoon, I stopped by the school unannounced to drop off Caleb's forgotten lunch. I saw Sarah in the hallway. She was kneeling to talk to a little boy. Not Caleb. A different one. The same boy. He smiled when he saw her. Reached for her hand. She took it. I stood there longer than I should have. Watched as she brushed his hair back. Leaned in close to speak softly to him. There was familiarity there. Comfort. Not the kind you fake. A teacher called her name. She looked up, and for a split second, her eyes met mine. Her face drained of color. She stood too fast. Let go of the boy's hand like it burned her. Walked toward me with that smile she used when she was trying to control a situation. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I held up the lunchbox. Caleb forgot this. She laughed, relief flooding her features. Too much relief. "Thank you," she said. "You didn't have to come all the way here." The boy tugged on her sweater. "Mommy, can I go play now?" She flinched. A teacher corrected him gently, but the damage was done. The word hung in the air between us. Sarah's smile faltered. She glanced around, then back at me. "He calls a lot of people that," she said quickly. "He's confused." I nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't ask questions. Not yet. That night, after everyone was asleep, I lay awake replaying moments I dismissed before. Late nights. Excuses. The way Sarah lit up when talking about school. The way she avoided my eyes lately. I wasn't ready to accuse her of anything. I didn't have proof. Just a pattern forming slowly in my mind. But something inside me, that old instinct you develop after living long enough, was awake now. And it wasn't going back to sleep. Once that instinct wakes up, it starts pulling threads whether you want it to or not. I didn't go digging right away. Part of me still hoped I was wrong, that there was some harmless explanation I hadn't considered. I wanted to protect the life I thought I had, even if it meant lying to myself a little longer. But truth has a way of demanding attention. A week after the school event, Sarah left her laptop open on the kitchen table. That alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the email pulled up on the screen. Not work-related. Not school-related. It was addressed to someone named David. The subject line read, "We need to talk about him." I stood there longer than I should have. Heart pounding. I told myself not to read it. That it was an invasion. That I didn't want to become that man. Then I thought about the boy's arms around her legs. The word mommy. The birthmark. I read it. The message was careful. Measured. Written by someone trying very hard not to say too much in case the wrong person saw it. But it said enough. He's asking questions. It read, "I don't know how much longer we can keep this from him. Or from Mickle." Seeing my name, there felt like a punch to the throat. I scrolled. There were more messages. Weeks. Months. Conversations about school schedules. About drop-offs. About keeping distance in public. About how hard this was getting. And then, the line that broke whatever was left of my denial. "He looks more like you every day." I sat down hard in the chair. The room felt smaller, like the walls had moved in while I wasn't paying attention. I checked the sent folder. There were replies from Sarah, carefully worded, loving in a restrained way, talking about boundaries, about timing, about how she never meant for it to happen like this. It just happened. That phrase showed up more than once. I closed the laptop and stared at the table, at the small scratches we'd put there over the years. Homework, meals, life. I wanted to throw something, yell, wake her up and demand answers. But I didn't. I needed more than words. I needed to understand how deep this went. The next day, I took a sick day from work. I followed Sarah. I hated myself for it. But I did it. She drove to the school like she said she would. Stayed for about an hour. Then she left. Didn't go to the clinic. Didn't go home. She drove across town to a small park I'd never been to. I parked far enough away to not be obvious. Sat there watching, feeling like my heart was beating in my ears. David arrived 10 minutes later. Same man from the gym. Same tight smile. Same nervous energy. He got out of the car, opened the back door, and helped the boy out. The boy ran ahead toward the playground. Sarah stepped out of her car. They didn't hug. They didn't kiss. They stood close, though. Close enough that there was no mistaking what they were to each other. She watched the boy play. Smiled the same smile she gave Caleb. The same soft, proud look. At one point, the boy fell. Scraped his knee. He ran straight to her. She knelt down, pulled him into her arms, and kissed the top of his head. That's when I saw it clearly. The way her hand rested on his back. The way he leaned into her, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't need a DNA test in that moment. I didn't need a confession. I already knew. Later that night, after Sarah fell asleep, I checked our old photos. Compared timelines. Birthdays. Business trips I'd taken. Conferences she'd attended. The math lined up too well. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even shocked. I was hollow. Because the truth wasn't just that my wife had betrayed me. It was that she'd built a second life right alongside ours, and I'd been living in the lie the whole time. There's a moment after the truth settles, and where you realize panic won't help you anymore. That's where I was. The discovery didn't send me into a rage. It drained me. Like someone had pulled the plug on every emotion at once. I went through the motions for a few days. Work, meals, conversations. All of it on autopilot. Sarah noticed something was off, of course. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was tired. That wasn't a lie. At night, lying next to her, I stared at the ceiling and planned. Not revenge, not yet, but clarity. I needed to understand the full shape of what I was dealing with before I acted. I owed that to myself. And more importantly, to Caleb. I started keeping notes. Dates. Times. Excuses. I went back years, replaying moments that hadn't made sense at the time. Trips she'd taken when I was out of town. Sudden schedule changes. Emotional distance that came and went in waves. I didn't confront her because I didn't want apologies shaped by panic. I wanted honesty shaped by inevitability. I also met quietly with a lawyer. Not to file anything yet. Just to understand my options. To know where I stood if this went where I suspected it would. The lawyer didn't flinch when I explained the situation. He'd heard worse. That somehow made it feel more real. He told me something that stuck. The person who stays calm usually controls the outcome. I held on to that. Emotionally, I was bouncing between grief and resolve. Grief for the marriage I thought I had. Resolve to protect my son from whatever storm was coming. Caleb was innocent in all this. He didn't need his world torn apart because adults made selfish decisions. I watched Sarah more closely now. Not like a jealous husband, but like someone observing a stranger. The warmth was still there, but it felt rehearsed. Her affection toward me had a careful quality to it, like she was trying not to overdo it. One night, while doing dishes together, she mentioned David by name. Just casually. Said he was one of the dads, helping with an upcoming fundraiser. I didn't react. That's good, I said. Sounds like he's involved. She nodded too quickly. Changed the subject. That was when I decided. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. I would give her space to hang herself with the truth. I reached out to David first. Not directly. Not yet. I gathered information. Found out where he worked. His marital status. Turns out he was divorced. Shared custody of the boy. That detail mattered. It explained how this could be hidden in plain sight. I also prepared myself for the possibility that the boy was biologically mine. That thought haunted me. The birthmark. The resemblance. The timeline. It all pointed in that direction. But I didn't let that thought consume me. I focused on what I could control. I rehearsed the conversation in my head 100 times. What I'd say. What I wouldn't. Where I'd draw lines. And slowly, something unexpected happened. The pain sharpened into clarity. I stopped seeing myself as the victim and started seeing myself as the one with leverage. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because truth, when revealed at the right moment, has weight. And I was done carrying the lie for her. The next step would change everything. And once I took it, there would be no going back. I chose a Tuesday. Nothing special about it. That was the point. No anniversaries. No birthdays. Just an ordinary day that would split our lives into before and after. I told Sarah we needed to talk that evening. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't sound angry. She looked relieved, actually, like she'd been waiting for permission to stop pretending. Before she got home, I sent one text. To David. I know. Be at my house at 7:30. You owe me the truth. No emojis. No threats. Just a statement. At 7:28, Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table. Hands folded. Eyes fixed on a spot, just past me. She knew. Whatever story she'd rehearsed, it was already playing in her head. At 7:31, the doorbell rang. She flinched. I opened the door and stepped aside. David walked in slowly. He looked smaller without the crowd around him. Less confident. His eyes went straight to Sarah. Then to me. Sit, I said. They sat. I stayed standing. I didn't accuse. I didn't shout. I didn't ask questions I didn't already know. I spoke plainly, the way you do when emotion is burned off and only facts remain. I know about the park, I said. The emails. The timelines. The boy. Sarah started to cry. Quietly. David stared at the floor. I kept going. I know he calls you mommy. I know why. I know when it started. And I know you both decided I didn't deserve the truth. David finally looked up. He's not, he started. I raised a hand. Don't, I said. This isn't a negotiation. The room felt tight, like the air had weight. Sarah reached for my hand. I stepped back. I'm not here to be comforted, I said. I'm here to be respected. That landed. David cleared his throat. He might not be yours, he said. We weren't sure. I nodded once. That's what the test is for. Sarah looked up, eyes wide. Test. I already scheduled it, I said. For the boy. And for Caleb, if needed. Court approved. Non-invasive. We do this clean. Her face crumpled. I won't let you drag this out, I continued. You don't get to keep secrets anymore. You don't get to decide what I can handle. Silence. Then Sarah spoke. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said. I never planned. I cut her off. You planned every day after it did. That was the blow. David stood up. I'm sorry, he said. For what it's worth. I looked at him. Really looked. What it's worth, I said, is that you helped break a family. Own that. He nodded. Sat back down. I laid out the terms. Not demands. Terms. We would tell the truth. To the lawyer. To the mediator. To the people it mattered to. In the right order. Caleb would be protected from adult details. The boy would be protected from confusion and lies. No more secret meetings. No more half-truths. And Sarah would move out. Not as punishment. As reality. She didn't argue. The test results came back 2 weeks later. The boy wasn't mine. I felt relief and grief hit at the same time. Relief for Caleb. Grief for the child who'd bonded to a woman who wasn't allowed to be his mother anymore. When I told Sarah, she cried harder than she had the night of the confrontation. Not because of me. Because the fantasy had finally collapsed. That was the moment she understood. This wasn't a mistake that could be fixed. It was a life she'd broken, and I was done holding it together for her. After the confrontation, the house got quiet in a way I'd never experienced before. Not peaceful. Not yet. Just empty. Sarah moved out the following weekend. She packed clothes, toiletries, personal things. Left behind furniture, photos, the life we'd built together. She tried to keep it practical, like logistics could soften what was happening. I helped only when it involved Caleb, explaining that Mom would be staying somewhere else for a while, that this wasn't his fault, that both of us loved him. That part nearly broke me. Caleb asked questions in the way children do. Simple, direct, unarmed. Why can't Mom stay here? Did I do something wrong? Will she still come to my games? I answered honestly, without burdening him with adult truth. I told him sometimes grown-ups make mistakes they can't undo, but that love for a child doesn't disappear because of it. He nodded, accepted it, and went back to building something out of blocks. Kids are resilient like that. Adults forget how. Sarah and I communicated mostly through text after that. Logistics. Schedules. School pickups. Nothing emotional. When she tried to drift into apologies or explanations, I gently shut it down. Not out of cruelty, out of necessity. I couldn't heal while she was still trying to rewrite the story. David faded out of our lives entirely. I made sure of that. Boundaries were established through lawyers and mediators. No contact outside what was legally required for his son. The boy stopped coming to school events with Sarah involved. I heard through the grapevine that he struggled with the separation, and that hurt more than I expected. But I reminded myself of something important. Truth doesn't stop being right just because it's painful. Over time, the anger softened. Not into forgiveness, not yet, but into acceptance. I stopped replaying conversations in my head. Stopped imagining alternate endings, where things had gone differently. That road leads nowhere good. Instead, I focused on rebuilding something smaller, quieter, more honest. Caleb and I developed our own rhythm. Pancake Saturdays, evening walks, talking about his day while I listened instead of half-listened. I showed up more, not because I had something to prove, but because I had something worth protecting. I learned things about myself too, about how easily trust can become complacency, about how silence can feel like peace until it isn't, about how strength sometimes looks like restraint instead of fury. Sarah and I eventually sat down, months later, to talk, really talk. Not about us getting back together. That door was closed. But about closure, about accountability, about what the future would look like as co-parents. She took responsibility, fully. No excuses, no minimizing. That mattered, not because it erased the past, but because it allowed the future to exist without constant tension. I don't hate her. Hate takes too much energy. I don't excuse her either. Some lines, once crossed, stay crossed. But I no longer carry her choices like a weight on my chest. Life didn't snap back into place. It reassembled itself slowly, imperfectly, into something new, something leaner, something truer. And one evening, months after everything fell apart, Caleb looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You seem happier, Dad." I didn't answer right away, because I realized he was right. I've had a lot of time to think since then. Long drives, quiet mornings, even quieter nights after Caleb's gone to sleep. That's when the lessons settle in. Not the loud, catchy ones people post online, but the heavy ones you earn. Here's what I learned. Betrayal doesn't always come crashing through the front door. Sometimes it slips in quietly, dressed as routine, as trust, as nothing to worry about. And the longer you avoid looking straight at it, the more damage it does when the truth finally demands space. I also learned that dignity isn't about winning. It's about refusing to lose yourself when someone else loses their way. There were moments I wanted to scream, to expose everything publicly, to make sure everyone knew what had been done to me. But that kind of release is short-lived. It feels powerful for about 5 minutes, then leaves you with more mess to clean up. What lasted was composure, boundaries, choosing when to speak and when to stay silent. Most of all, I learned that children are always watching, not just how you love them, but how you handle pain. Caleb didn't need to see his father broken or bitter. He needed to see that life can knock you flat, and you can still stand back up without becoming something ugly. Do I still think about that boy sometimes? I do. I hope he's okay. I hope he grows up surrounded by honesty, even if it came late. None of this was his fault, or Caleb's, or even mine, if I'm being fair to myself. Some stories don't have villains, just people who made selfish choices, and other people who had to live with the consequences. If you're listening to this and something in your life feels off, not dramatic, not explosive, just quietly wrong, pay attention to that feeling. Don't panic. Don't accuse. Just don't ignore it either. Truth has a way of surfacing. The only real choice you get is whether you'll meet it with fear or with your spine straight. I didn't come out of this untouched, but I came out honest, present, still standing, and that's enough for me. So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Uncle Mickle's voice travels. Final thought, and this one's earned the hard way. When the truth finally shows itself, don't rush to destroy. Choose instead to rebuild what's worth saving. starting with yourself.